Multitasking is a term that was made for computers. Humans cannot multitask. We can shift from one task to another in a nanosecond.
Jeff Boyd is the co-founder of MTE, a research-backed wellness supplement that supercharges focus and productivity.
If you ever talk to somebody and they're on their phone and their answer's delayed, even if it's a half a beat, it's just not the normal course of response because they're filling their minds. I never looked through that lens until one day I looked over and we were in the car and I was talking to my daughter and her response to me was delayed. I looked over and I was like, what are you doing? We're having a conversation. You can't do both. People should really take stock of what they're putting in, not only their body, but also their mind. Not all nootropics are created equal. Caffeine's a nootropic by definition, particularly what caffeine and some energy drinks and things like what they're missing is they're just giving you energy, but you have no ability to use it properly, right? Now you're just awake and still miserable.
The CYP1A2 gene plays a major role in determining a person's sensitivity to caffeine.
For somebody where they have this gene, they're going to take MTE and they truly are going to be Bradley Cooper and limitless. The saffron we use is clinically studied at 28 milligrams. Then you put that on a rocket by removing caffeine, putting paraxanthine in. This is combined with 9 other powerful synergistic ingredients that are contributing to healthy energy.
What is the awareness that we need to bring to people around shifting from caffeine to other sources? You're in full dad mode, but you're also an entrepreneur, and holding those two worlds can be pretty freaking challenging.
Yeah.
So like raising children, or even for your wife, birthing children, when you birth something into the world, it ain't easy. Right. It can actually be a bit traumatic. And I know this because we were in the NICU as well with my son Nova for 10 days, which I don't wish that on anyone. The medical system is a fucking beast.
It is the worst.
So just don't enter that, y'all. But the reason I'm saying that is because when you birth something like MTE, it's the same process of death and rebirth and all the stuff you thought you knew, you didn't actually know that well. And you're meeting with scientists and team and packaging and promotion. And like, I just don't think people understand just to get something in a box, how much work it takes to get something in a box that's tested, that's proven. It's it's parent is what I'm saying. Right. So as a parent, describe in a few sentences for people that have never heard you on a pod or don't know anything about MTE, or well, they know a little bit if they've been listening to the show about adaptogens and paraxanthine, which I love. But as a dad, what is this child to you? Like, what does this represent to you, to the world, in a few sentences?
In a few sentences? You've bottled me up.
I like to put you on the spot, man.
You've bottled me up.
Like if you were in an elevator and you were carrying it and like an old grandma said, hey, what's this box you're carrying, Sonny? What would you say to her?
That's a daily wellness powder. That's how I look at it. I feel like it's something that helps you be well every day. And that's the goal for me, is feeling good. It's all about, like I talk about, luxury's feeling good, success is feeling good, energy's feeling good. Like feeling good is the basis of where it all starts for me. Because if you don't feel good, I mean, like I think when we met initially, we talked about, I like to go to extremes and then work backwards. So like you're down in the corner with the flu, dude, that's the worst, right? I mean, you don't even want to move. You sleep 20 hours a day, like, and then working backwards from that, feeling good, you can be your best self, really shine. And that's what this is that's in our world, as close as we could get for something you could take every day and help you. It's not a magic pill. We talked about this earlier, right? Like it's not a shortcut, quick fix. It's the opposite of those things.
But nothing ever is.
Right.
And if we think something is a shortcut, it's typically a long cut.
Correct.
Like anytime that we try to get the magic pill or like the Willy Wonka chocolate bar where we're going to go to the factory, all of a sudden you get there and you're like, well, I didn't learn how to get here. I did a shortcut and I kind of pseudo learned how to be there, but I haven't integrated the wisdom as to how to actually really live well. So this begs the question, if it's about wellness and living well and having energy to be awesome, really, like more than energy is your company. How does that process even begin from the people that have written in, that have told you about it? And not even product specific. Like we'll get into the science stuff, but just on the emotional, personal side, for people that want energy, where do they even start? I assume there's cutting out things, but it's more fun to add in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. I mean, nobody wants to be, I talk about this. I love magic. And I always talk about a lot of times the misdirection. All you really need to do to get people to do what you want is tell them not to do it, right? So, but it's hidden in magic, where it'll be like, there's nothing up this sleeve, right? So what do people do? Immediately stare at that sleeve. They don't take you at your word.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of the same thing with this. People don't want to be told what to do or where to look or how to act. So when you start telling people, yeah, you can get more energy, go to bed earlier, eat cleaner, don't drink, cut caffeine, all these things, people are like, no, and they go into full panic mode, which is fair. But
those are serious coping strategies you're trying to take away.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So, I think when you start to balance those things, and also you have to look at the world in which we live today, right? Like the environment we live in today is so different than even 20 years ago, right? Where like sleep is almost villainized to some degree, clearly not to you or I, but in society. I mean, I remember when my first corporate job before I became an entrepreneur, people would, they would ask you how many hours of sleep you got last night, and the answer better be small. Because if you said I slept 10 hours, like, oh, yeah, I was here at the office till 10, bro. And you're like,
it's like a badge of honor that people wear in the corporate sphere. I remember there was a Shark Tank guy, the guy that always wears the fancy suits. I don't remember his name.
Me neither.
And he goes, I sleep 4 hours a night. And he said it like we were supposed to bow down to this guy.
Yeah.
As if it was some good thing that you're crushing your brain and not allowing it to clean itself. But anyways, I digress. So keep going.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So you have that. You have now just the distractions are just omnipresent, right? I mean, whether it's the phones or the ability. I mean, when we were growing up, you want to watch a show. It came on Thursday night at 7. You watch it for 30 minutes. And you waited till next Thursday, right? And so now it's like, you want to watch a show, bing, bing, bing. Next thing you know, it's 2 a.m. Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's all these encroachments on your sleep, and the mind is very, very rarely able to relax. There's stimulus all the time, the phones, social media, just this 24-hour news cycle. It's insane. Yeah. And so to act, and that's kind of the genesis of this, was to say, for all of us to go through life and acting like nothing's changed in the last 20 years and using the same supplements, the same coping mechanisms, I thought it was sort of foolish. And, you look at, and I think we're much wiser. You go to somebody in the 90s and give them an energy drink, they may, or I think most people back then just looked at it with neutrality. Right now, I think most people are kind of hip to the fact that probably not good for me, in a pinch. So that's changed, but yet there were no other alternatives. A lot of things were siloed, a lot of quick fixes, and I just kept seeing a lot of the same stuff, not really responding to, hey, we're under attack. It's impossible to focus now. Sleep is getting stepped on, and on it goes. So it's sort of the genesis of what we put together.
Yeah, I love that, because, man, what you don't know that you don't know, it's called unconscious incompetence in the learning model from Claire Graves and NLP. If you don't know something, that's why it's a shadow. It's so hidden that you have no idea about it. So today, one of my intentions is to open up people to stuff that they don't even know they don't know. Yeah. Both scientifically and spiritually. Yeah, yeah. So I look at the energy quotient as energy is our ability to live and be on purpose and care and show up for the people that we love in a way where it doesn't hurt us. Mm-hmm. So there's a positive energy cycle where we can train our body to be in homeostasis. And then there's the stimulant fucking roller coaster where we're just taking things all day long. Like some friends of mine in the past, I remember when I was a trainer, I used to take hydroxycut and then I would drink beers at night. And it would be like this up roller coaster, down roller coaster. And y'all can relate to this. It's not a shame thing. I'm not saying I'm better because I've learned this information. We're just here to share the info.
Sure.
So have you ever been on that roller coaster personally?
Totally.
Where you would go up and down, crash and drive? How did that look for you at some point in your life?
Yeah, it's weird because yes. So full stop, just yes. But I also have never really been void of energy, right? So what's funny is I created this large, and I named it More Than Energy because I felt like we needed a lot more than just energy. And I think if you built the foundation, energy just naturally manifests itself from being well, from having the stress reduction, from having the ability to focus, right? From having better gut health, better sleep at night, and then taking that on a foundational level, not just better sleep at night by drinking 6 beers as an example. Like one thing, this may sound so rudimentary, but you sleep, let's say you have 6 beers or whatever, and then you sleep 10 hours. You're not really sleeping 10 hours. Your body's just sort of passed out. And that's not the same as full sleep and recovery, right? So and as you get older, you sort of learn that lesson the hard way, right?
Once you hit 40, y'all, the game changes.
Totally changes. Yeah. So, this is more about being a foundation, right? As opposed to just a quick fix or covering up a lifestyle where it's like, oh, I'm going to go have like I always tell people, this is not meant to take you from a deficit to baseline. This is meant to take you from good to great. And for me, that's in conjunction with a lifestyle, right? So not doing, so we've been there, like to answer coming back to your question.
Yeah,
absolutely. I used to love the party. Used to love staying out late, loved caffeine, loved my espressos. I never really was an energy drink guy, but, stimulants to stay awake. Absolutely. Work out, the whole thing. And it was just vicious cycle, as you know. And it took years to unwind that. It wasn't one day for me. I have friends where it was like one day, I got to stop or I'm going to kill myself. Mine was a little bit more, less dramatic and more of like, I just want to start feeling better. I'm not maximizing my potential. I heard this really interesting clip from John Mayer actually. And he was like, one day I just went on a bender and the next day I was like, all right, what amount of my potential do I want to utilize? If it's 80%, then I'll keep living, that's great. And then 20% of it I'll dedicate to partying. But his answer was 100%. So he quit drinking. And, I think that was an interesting way to look at it because it is like abstinence is not for everybody, right? But dialing it down or recognizing, hey, it does come with a cost, right? If I'm going to dedicate some of that 100% to partying or feeling good or socializing or whatever you want to call it, all good, like truly all good. Like I don't say that in a condescending way.
Yeah.
I still have, I was just telling you, I have like an amazing wine collection still I love and very proud of, like I'm in. But knowing it's coming out of that 100% every time it goes down. Right. And then also knowing the next day, I'm not going to build myself up with a bunch of caffeine and stimulants and things that just are really tearing me down.
So you never had a moment where you were like in the gutter energetically?
No, not me.
Okay. Well, that's not the case for many people. Like look at the sales of Monsters.
Right.
Sorry, Taylor. Not sorry, bro. I mean, Monsters are not that great for you. Now, I'm not here to say that you should never drink that stuff. Sometimes you might just have to go on a 12-hour shift as an oil rig captain.
Yeah.
And you're going to need something. And that's the only thing at the store.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there is a place, I think, for emergency stimulants.
Yeah.
Because you just have to perform.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that.
Yeah.
So I think about the caffeine conversation of people that are trying to go to work. And I have like real respect and reverence for people that are struggling. I have been there, dude. I was an automotive mechanic for the first 5 years out of high school. So I worked on like luxury Mercedes Benz. I did caffeine every day.
Yeah.
Now in my 20s, it didn't matter.
Sure.
But in my 40s, it really matters. So I think this product, it's for everyone, but let's be honest, man, it's really for the people that have rode that caffeine train for a long time and now their adrenals are roasted and they feel physiologically cooked.
Yeah.
And they've done the damage to themselves like I've done too. And now they're at a place where they're like, okay, what else is there? Like what else is possible?
Right.
What else is possible from an energetic standpoint? I think that's the game that we all get to play now, especially with science and all the amazing things that are coming from science.
Right.
We live in a world that's so scientifically driven, yet most of the science that we're taught or that we're told is coming from people like Fauci or the WHO. Where's the conversation about, hey, we're the government and we're going to give you this beautiful education on how to have energy naturally using adaptogens and alternative energy sources.
Yeah.
Do you find that the people that actually get into the MTE ecosphere have been on that train for a long time or no?
I got a couple thoughts there. I mean, the first one is most people that take it use caffeine in some form or fashion. And a lot of people, like I use my wife as an example, big caffeine user, a couple times a day, a couple in the morning, one in the afternoon. She started taking MTE, and I've heard this from so many people. They don't set out to replace caffeine. Like people, there's three groups, right? To me, is like one are like, I don't drink caffeine. It makes me insane. right? And then one are like, I drink it or I used to or whatever, but I don't want to anymore, right? And then the bucket is like, don't mess with my caffeine. Like if you're trying to give me a replacement, I don't even want to hear it, right? And so
that's on the coffee mug that has like a little icon that says, don't talk to me unless I've had my morning coffee.
100%.
That's actually like a thing.
Yeah,
People
totally.
advertise.
And that's how my wife was, right? She didn't have that mug, thank God, but she was a big coffee user.
Yeah.
My mom, there's so many people that I know that are in the inner circle that I'm able to have deep conversations with about this and see. Because the other thing that I found, this is no surprise, but actions speak louder than words, right? I mean, like the oldest adage. But just seeing, like my wife will be like, yeah, I like it. But then I see her still hammering down 5 cups of coffee, early days. She hasn't had a cup of coffee in, I don't know, 6 months. She started taking this, and this is my point, is the punchline here, is so many people start taking this and they lose their appetite for caffeine. Not they didn't set out to do that. It's just such a better option. I know Sean has mentioned that to me one time, and he was like, yeah, dude, it will happen. Like people will just, and then I have others that still love their Americano in the morning and then MT in the afternoon. So like it's all over the board. I don't like to pigeonhole it in that you have to quit caffeine.
Yeah.
I think what happens is your body starts to crave. So, because here's the thing. I look at caffeine much like the sand, the pebble of sand, right? Every day. And then next, a couple of years later, you wake up and have a beach. It's kind of the same as like, you ever put on a 20-pound weight vest? You're like, oh my God, this is significant, right? I mean, I'm like 20, it weighs on you.
Yeah.
But if you walk around 20 pounds overweight, you got there an ounce at a time or less at a time, and it just was gradual and you never really noticed it. But that weight vest is so abrupt. I feel like that's sort of how this is. You walk around taking caffeine, you don't really realize you're kind of frying your adrenals. You're pumping so much epinephrine in your system. You're encroaching upon your sleep. Even if you're able to sleep, it's of lower quality. And you take something like this that's the good of caffeine and gives you this smooth awakening and energy, but then bundling it with all of these things, these adaptogens, clinically bettered sleep. There's a lot of things that are like sleep support that give you a quick fix, if you will, or
like a bunch of melatonin or
correct.
something.
I mean, that's where I was going, is that it's treating the symptom and not the cause, if you will, right? Like you may get to sleep a little faster tonight, but then tomorrow night, where are you, right? Like this with the saffron giving you actually clinically studied sleep that helps you build on it and become, accumulate. That to me makes this thing the limitless powder, plus you throw in the focus and the mood and all these things that come with it. We can deep dive that, but it's an interesting relationship with caffeine, just to go back to your initial point, because I think what's funny is a lot of people take it, lose the appetite for caffeine, which they never saw coming, that's been the most interesting thing for me.
This is the beauty of, if you look at like all the behavioral scientists that are at the top of the food chain, like BJ Fogg, Charles Duhigg, Dr. Judd Brewer, they all say the same thing with different verbiage. And that is, it's really hard to take stuff out.
Yeah.
From a behavior change standpoint, it's really easier to add stuff in. So it's like, let's say I have 100 blocks. If you tell me to take out 50 of those blocks, I'm going to feel empty. I'm not going to have my normal resources. But if you just add in 50 new blocks, then the 50 that are causing you the deleterious health stuff, they're just going to vacate.
Right.
They're just going to leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a roundabout way, when you start pushing new stuff into your life that actually moves the needle for you and gives you the result that you want without crushing yourself health-wise, it's a trick for the brain, actually.
Yeah.
And for the generation that you and I have talked about before we recorded, and even in our last conversation, the people on TikTok or Instagram that want like the quick fix, this is the quick fix, y'all. The quick fix is to not remove anything. The quick fix is to add in really good stuff, and then the energy of that good stuff overpowers the stuff that is causing you all the things you don't want anyways. Do you find this to be true?
Totally.
Have you seen this play out with the people that write in or just in your own life?
Yeah.
I mean, I have for sure.
Yeah, totally.
I add in the good and the bad just leaves on its own.
And it's perspective, right? Like if somebody comes and says, all right, Josh, you're cutting this, and this, you're like, what?
Forget about it.
That's miserable.
Yeah.
Right. But if it's like, okay, and it's, it's a well-worn path, like new year, new you, right? Like when do gym memberships go up, right? It's January, right? I mean, that's when they sell most of them. And then, they taper off and people actually buy the gym memberships and go in January. And then in February, it's like the lowest membership, right? It's like they're adding something and then what other things will fall by the wayside. It's kind of the same thing with supplements or anything else. I think when you add stuff, it's perspective as opposed to new year, new you. Don't go out, don't drink, don't watch TV, don't this, don't that, don't, people are like, what? I'm just going to go buy a gym membership. You know what I mean? So, and then sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't, but adding things in and then letting your body just sort of ebb and flow 100%.
Well, right now, somebody's listening to this, and they're smack dab in the middle of the recognition that their New Year's resolutions haven't resolved.
Right.
Because this is like mid-January 2025.
Right.
So I think what's really fascinating about this, and I don't know if you know this, but after I was an auto mechanic, I was a personal trainer for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I worked in like big box gyms, 24-hour fitness, and then private studio. And I remember the general manager would be like, yeah, our business is built on breakage. Planet Fitness, 24-hour fitness. They get 80% of their revenue of people that never go to the gym.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane.
80% of their revenue comes from people that never go to the gym.
What's even more insane is those people, it's not as if they're unaware that they're being charged for the gym membership. They want it in their back pocket. Yeah. It's a little bit of, well, I could go if I wanted to. I have the membership, right? So yeah, it's a weird psychology, like human behaviors. Pretty fascinating.
We're crazy beings.
Yeah.
We make up a lot of stories to ourselves that we believe, don't we?
Right.
I'll get to it. Like case in point, there's an empty lot next to us and we reached out to the owner and we were like, hey, you've owned this for 14 years and you haven't sold it. Would you like to sell it to us? Yeah. And he's like in his high 70s and he goes, no, I'm going to build something on it. You haven't built in 14 years, dude. So it's like this, we see people that just, they'll get to it one day. Yeah. Whether it's, real estate or health or whatever it is, it's in the back pocket. And there's this weird psychological, maybe Judd Brewer could share with us what this is. There's this weird psychological aspect that we have where as long as we have it around us, whatever the thing is that we know we want to do, then it cues the subconscious mind as if we've done it. Yeah. Or as if it's going to happen one day. Totally. But there's this inflection point for people that want to have energy and want to be healthy. And they might buy the supplements or buy the things, or they might even buy the MTE and like stick it on the shelf. There's got to be something deeper as to why somebody actually wants to change. Like the power to change is always there, but what do you think that is? What do you think it is inside of the human psyche and in the human being where they buy the tools and they buy the things, but they still have to do it. They still have to apply it in order to get the result. What do you think the choice is, the actual positive choice is that lets people really do the things they want to do? What is that in the human psyche?
It's an interesting question. I just kept thinking the whole time your neighbor definitely has a couple dormant gym memberships too.
He's got a Planet Fitness membership that's like 15 years old.
Totally. What's fascinating is I look just online. You see an influencer who will have hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, right? And then that influencer will have another page that's their method, right? Like a fitness influencer. Let me clarify. A fitness influencer. And then they'll have another page that's their method, right? Or their workouts or whatever. The person usually, I'm sure somebody could quickly prove me wrong here, but generally speaking, my anecdotal experience is they'll have like 10x followers for the person than the method. So it's like, I'm interested in the person. I love what they're doing. I'm interested enough to follow them because of the results or whatever, the aspiration, whatever it is about them that I find interesting. I want to follow them. And then that person has said, hey, followers, here's how you can get all the things you're interested in, right? By doing this method. And they're like, not interested in that, right? It's kind of like, and this is just something as simple as following, right? I mean, clicking a follow button. When you talk about actually going and doing it, right? Things that are in motion stay in motion and vice versa. So I think sometimes it's life. You get in a downward spiral. There's so much mental that goes into it. And you find, all right, I'm going to change things. This is my year. And then a week goes in and whatever happens, you miss a session of the gym, or you go on a bender with your friends, or you order pizza. And then I think what happens, I've seen with a lot of people, is they're like, well, I failed. It's over. And I think the perspective that helps people really see this through is it's not, I think it's why diets don't work, because they're finite, right? Whatever the goal is, whether it's lose 10 pounds or fit in my dress or whatever it is, once you reach it, like human nature, once you reach a goal, it's like, what do you do at the finish line? You stop running, right? I mean, who's ever finished a marathon and just kept going, right? I mean,
David Goggins.
right. But, generally speaking, you hit a finish line. It's like, okay, I'm done. And so it's kind of the same thing with diets or exercise, or, I'm going to go to the gym and then, I've done it. Now, mission accomplished. I've stopped. Whereas if you look at it as a lifestyle, this is just your new normal. Yeah, you're going to miss a session of the gym. You're going to go have a bender, whatever it is, that doesn't define you. Those are in the margins. What defines you is what you're doing most of the time. You're 80-20, or maybe even ramp it to 95-5, whatever. And you get I see some people, they're like 100-0 on some of this stuff. And I'm like, dude, that's probably too much working out, or too, right? Like I'm big on moderation. I love it. I think it helps me stay balanced, particularly now, like you're talking about earlier with being a father and starting a business. Like my wife and I were talking about it this morning, actually. We started our last businesses. We were in our 20s, and really all we had to do with our lives is start a business, right? I mean, we were both very social. So, like be good sons and daughters and friends and grind. We would just work and work and work and network and just grow these businesses. Now, fast forward many years, now we've 2 kids. We're like, that's such an important thing to us. Being fit, being well, being healthy, feeling good. Those are no longer gimmies, right? Like in your 20s, we talked about earlier, it's a little different. You can sort of maintain, work out, miss a couple workouts. Okay, life will go on. Now, it, right? It physically, mentally. So, I'm off on a few different tangents here, but
it's a good tangent.
Yeah,
it's all connected.
I like the ability to have balance and to keep perspective, right? That this is, because otherwise, I think that's what happens with the gym membership. Well, I missed it last week. I'm done. I'll keep the membership just in case life settles down. I don't have to travel and I don't have this and I can do it again. I'll keep my options open. I think people like to have their options open. And what's it cost me? $20 a month, $50 a month. Like, okay, fine. I'll just keep my options open. But I think when you look at it through a different lens, I think because I've been there, right? It's like, I want to go run a triathlon. And then I was never able to get to the pool. So I was like, all right, it's over. I'll just keep biking and running. And then, the triathlon just never happened. So, but if you look at it through a different lens, I think it's easier to stick to. But that's sort of me attacking the problem and trying to solve it. In terms of answering your question, why people do that, dude, like way smarter people than
that's the multi-billion-dollar question right there.
Yeah.
And I know you're not a behavioral scientist, but a lot of our behaviors stem from trauma and beliefs that we have.
Yeah.
And I think the antidote to trauma and beliefs that hold us hostage is actually surrender. It's actually surrender to something outside of ourselves. Some people call it God. Some people call it Allah. Some people call it whatever. I think there's hundreds of thousands of religions in the world. And I think whether it's taking a supplement or going for a walk or a run, as we add in the good, there has to be a fuel source as to why we're even doing that in the first place. Like, why do we care or love ourselves enough, or our children, to do the new things, to add in the new behaviors? And I think when I look across all the research, like there was a really amazing film done. It was called the Human Longevity Project. And it was about these blue zones. Okinawa, Japan, I think Alta Loma, California, Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, and some other place I'm forgetting. There's 5 blue zones in the world.
Ecuador, I think, wasn't it?
Somebody's typing it in right now, but it's like 5 places where they everybody lives past 100, or many people live past 100. And it wasn't just the food or the movement or the social interaction. The key that unlocked the door to living really long was actually a belief in a higher power. That was the thing across all of these 5 zones. So I know people have a lot of wounding around God and wounding around religion. I'm not here to tell you all how to think, right? I'm just offering this different lens.
Yeah.
If it's true that in the places in the world where people live the longest, where they're on purpose, and the key that unlocks the quotient of being a centenarian is a belief in a higher power, that to me is the biggest fuel source for adding in healthy things. Because then why are we doing this in the first place? We have to just surrender and trust at times. Otherwise, our mind is like a demon that can just run our lives, right? Like Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll run your life and you'll call it fate. So many people are operating 100 pounds overweight, addicted to caffeine, addicted to pornography. Addiction is the disconnection from self. So I wonder what this conversation really is in 2025 for the people with us that are realizing they're choking on the bitter pill of like, my resolution didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, where do they go from there once they've been hit with the reality that the promise they made to themselves, they broke?
Yeah.
Is it this connection to God? Is it a connection to something else? Like, how does that work for you personally when you keep a promise to yourself? Like, why do you keep that promise to yourself?
Oh, that's really interesting. Before I answer that, I want to tell you, I've studied those blue zones a little bit too. And the one thing that I always found fascinating beyond your point, which is chief among the fascinating points, is all of them. Some of them were vegetarians, vegans. Some of them ate meat. The Sardinia, they drank a little wine.
Yeah.
The one thing that they all did in common is ate beans. So that was the one. All 5 zones ate beans. I thought that was interesting. I think the Greeks were pescatarians. Largely, they would eat some lamb. The California group were vegans. Anyway, beans was the commonality in terms of the food. I thought that was really interesting for whatever it's worth. To answer your question, I would say there's no way you could have failed at this point in the year. I mean, full stop. We're early on. I mean, you had a resolution to do something January 1st and a week, 2 weeks, fast forward to April and you haven't done it. Like this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's nothing unless your resolution was to get up and go to the grocery stores and you didn't, right? I mean, if the resolution is long facing, it's a lifestyle and lifestyles don't change. I mean, habits are developed over 90 days, right? Doing it every day for 90 days is a habit. And that's very difficult to do. So that's, I think, more applicable to when you're cutting something out, right? If you're going to stop drinking, you need to get past the 90-day mark to where now, okay, it's a habit that I don't drink. But going to the gym or eating right or being more social or going out or putting yourself out there or all these things that people resolve to do because it's not kind of clean and tidy. Like most diets are started on Monday, right? Because it's like, I'll go through the weekend, have a fresh start on Monday, January 1st, same thing, like New Year, like I love it. But no, like I would argue no one in the world has failed at this point. It's too early. Like this is a lifestyle change. Give yourself some grace. There's going to be ebbs and flows and that's never going away. This could be 10 years from now. You're going to, it will vary in intensity and the valleys and peaks probably will even out a little bit. Early on, they're going to be deeper, but that's just part of the journey. I think it's part of the fun, frankly. It doesn't have to be so white-knuckled and absolute.
Yeah, whenever I find that somebody's living their life on purpose, in other words, they're chasing down their dream. They've done the work to even figure out what their dream is, like what the hell they want to do with their life. It typically, like most of the time, is connected to something that brings them joy, right? Like whether you want to be a real estate mogul or an actor or a podcaster or a blog writer or a speaker, you do it because it's natural for you to do and you enjoy it so much. So in other words, what I'm saying is it doesn't cost you so much energy. It gives you energy. When you do what you love and you're living your life on purpose and you've done all the hard work to even put yourself in that position, because let's be honest, chasing down your dream ain't easy. Right? There's lots of things you have to do that you don't want to do as you chase down your dream. But then once you get there, it gives you energy back. And so I think, and I wonder how you feel about this, I think when people live their life on purpose, and for me, it is a connection to God. I think that's a huge quotient, not just because of the blue zones, because I've seen that play out for me, man. When I was disconnected with God, I was burning a lot of energy. Angry at God, angry at life, not trusting life. What I'm saying is, when people live their life on purpose, it gives them energy, and they're less monetizable from the monster drinks and from the crap that they're drinking that's just stimulating their soul. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, first of all, I've had a chance to sit here across from you a couple times now, on off camera, and I think you're like a perfect manifestation of that. Like, you can feel it and sense it from you, that you're chasing your dream, living your dream, and loving it. And you know, anybody who hasn't had a chance to sit here, which would be most people listening, I think it's like, it's palatable. You can actually feel it from you. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, without kissing your ass too much.
Hey, thanks, man. Thank you.
I think it's. But there aren't many people that you sit across from. I mean, I've had the chance to meet all types of people from all walks of life, varying degrees of success by any definition. And, you know, what's I find unique is there are few people that have this magnetism where they're just like glowing. I'm happy. I'm doing what I love. It's not without your challenges, but that I'm actually reveling in that because it's making me stronger, better. I'm curious for those things. Like you're like, you're living all that, and you can feel it, and it's you know, I can sense it from sitting across here. So I think it's worth noting, right? Particularly since you usually interview people and they just come on here and babble about their own beliefs or, you know, whatever. I think it's pretty, you know, I wanted to acknowledge that because I think it's pretty cool and
thank you. Well, I've done a lot of stuff I quote didn't want to do to build that scaffolding of the dream.
Right.
And this is the part about dream making that people don't talk about. You're going to have to do shit you don't like to earn the thing that you like. Dude. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, that's I'm going to butcher the saying, but it's like, I'm going to do today what I don't want to do so I can do, you know,
Oh, an entrepreneur does what most people won't so they can live the life that most people don't.
Exactly.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I've heard the quote before. I know you're talking about.
Like I obviously don't have it tattooed up my forearm, but it's like I've heard it and I was like, yeah, okay. I think, you know, it's funny. My daughter's 13 and I have no idea why a 13-year-old is talking about this, but she was talking about college and what she, you know, and she has a cousin who's starting to look at college too. And she has another cousin who's in college. So I think, and we just spent Thanksgiving with them. So maybe it was like top of mind and she's going to high school next year. But anyway, we were just talking about just colloquially college, what we want to do. And she was like, you know, I'm thinking maybe like being a, you know, anesthesiologist or doctors, like they make a lot of money. And my wife was like, look, you do nothing for money, right? Like that is a dead end. Like go find a path, do something you love. I mean, you know, again, it's like these silly sayings that have been said so much, and you know, do something you love and never work a day. Like they're repeated so often, people just begin to dismiss them and don't listen to them.
Yeah, but
they're sort of the best ones, right? I mean, truly, and it was pretty jolting because we were both like, I know anesthesiologists, not all of them, of course, but the few that I know, some couldn't be happier. It's their dream. Some of them couldn't be more miserable. And they're stuck. They've spent infinite numbers of years in med school. They're down the path and they're like, I'm doing this the rest of my life and I'm miserable. That's the greatest fear, isn't it? I mean, that's just terrible. So doing what you love is, you have setbacks. You have, like last night, I'm just buried. I had a couple things, this, that, and the other. And I was up till like we decorated the Christmas tree, but everybody went to bed. And then at 9:30, I started working on my email box and went to bed at 2, right? Like that is not ideal.
Yeah.
Right. Like I do not revel in going to bed past 10, frankly, but had to get done. Right. I mean, it's just like, it was, you know, with Thanksgiving and everything else, I'm just too backed up and I had to get it done. The hope is, you know, as we grow the business and continue, my days of answering emails till 2 a.m. will be fleeting.
Yeah.
And in the rearview, deep in the rearview mirror, you know, soon. But you have to grind and do some stuff you don't want to do.
I love that you brought up your daughter. Can you tell that story? So she's 13 and she said, oh, I'm going to do something that's going to make me a bunch of money. Where do you think that thought was even injected from? Because it didn't come from you and your wife.
Didn't, no.
That you need to grow up and make a bunch of money. Because I remember Alan Watts was sharing, and this is, if there's one person, well, there's two people. I'd love to interview Jesus and Alan Watts. That would be like the best interview. Imagine having both of them at the table. But I love Alan Watts because when I started my spiritual growth journey 15 years ago, I used to listen to his YouTube clips, like when I was taking a shower or whatever. And one thing that I loved, he said, you know, people come to me they're in vocational schools, and I ask them, well, what is it that makes you itch? What is it that you would get joy out of doing if you didn't get paid for it? Go do that.
Yeah.
Because the time is going to pass anyway. So you may as well do something that you love.
Totally.
And I think the wisdom he was bringing forth was the opposite of what your daughter was questing after. What do you make of that? And how did that go with her, that conversation?
As far as my daughter goes, what's funny is I have no idea where she got it, because we always preach success has very little to do with money, if at all, right? It has to do more with being happy, feeling good, right? I mean, like I say that, it's like a nice marketing jingle, but that's how we live our lives, right? It's balance, all these things. That's success to us, and being happy, right? And so I have no idea where she got it. In modern society, I have no idea. But
it was freaking Snapchat or TikTok.
Right.
It was some marketing guru.
But
chatting.
I will tell you this. She kind of, you know, she's grown up in New York City and then Miami, and now we're here. So you know, she's been exposed to some of it as well. But I think the thing I love about my daughter in the context of this conversation is it took her about 2 seconds to realize, oh yeah, that's right. Like, you know, it's just a 13-year-old thought. And then she's like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to do, what am I thinking? I would do something. I want to do something I love, get into it. So she got it quickly. And I feel like that's kind of like, you know, parenting, it's ebb and flow. There's no handbook. There's no scorecard to speak of, right?
There's lots of books, but like they never apply in the moments where you need them to apply.
Right. I mean, you can't she says that. And I'm like, okay, hold on.
Let me
run
consult
out to the
my
car.
manual, darling. Hold on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we were at Alchemy having acai bowls. So it's like, you know, even if I had the manual, I didn't have it with me.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, to her credit, she's like immediately was like, oh yeah, I get, you know. So that's one of my favorite things about her, and is she's enlightened and gets it. So
essentially, what is the antidote to that type of thinking?
I think it's just doing what you love, right? And pursuing happiness. I think it's scary. And my wife and I had a call with a friend of ours in Miami this morning. She has a yoga studio and she wants to do a brand, like a clothing line. And she was looking for just to kick around some financials with us. And so we wanted to help her out. And she's like, well, I'm hearing, you know, some people are saying the market's not big enough and this not big enough. And it's like, man, people are all too happy. We've heard that at every stop, right? Like when I started this, people are like, well, who's your competitor? What about the market? And I'm like, I'm not even like, that's a rabbit hole. That's an endless rabbit hole, right? Like you got to I'm passionate about it. It's going to make me happy. And if I put that energy out, it's going to radiate, and there's going to be the peaks and the valleys, but the curiosity and learnings will outweigh all of those costs, and it's going to be awesome.
Dude, you know why we love and respect the people that achieve, quote, success, not just financial success, but like we can tell they're emanating that they love what their life is all about? It's because they remind us by their life that it's possible for us.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, crabs in a bucket, when one crab starts to crawl out, the other crabs pull it down because they're like, hey, we're stuck here in this bucket. But what all the crabs don't realize is they can climb out of the bucket too.
Right.
But it's a mindset shift. It's like being an entrepreneur, being healthy, having an identity. This has been coming into my field quite a bit lately. The identity of the person I am, and always using the identity as a mirror that reflects back to me exactly who I am.
Yeah.
For some of us, it's our wife, our husband, our friends, or just our bank account. They're all reflections of our identity. So if my identity is that I live my life on purpose, then I give people permission slips to do the same thing. It's so beautiful how this works out.
Yeah.
And we make it so complicated where people like your friends would say, oh, what about the market and the saturation?
Yeah.
Nobody gave me permission to start this podcast a decade ago.
Right.
If I would have asked for permission,
No.
I would be in some place that I hate. In other words, the people that live their dreams and live their life on purpose, it's not like they're not going to receive negative feedback or fear from other people. It's that I actually think that's the cost. That's the cost of living your life on purpose and doing what you love, is being able to withstand the doubts and the fears of the people around you that actually secretly want you to succeed, but they're so in fear about their own path to success that they want to knock you down.
Yeah, I think
felt this
so.
for sure.
Yeah. I've always thought there's some people who just really value stability and like predictability. So that though, like they would never really do what we're doing. Right. I mean, it's just, they're not doing this because they're scared or anything else. It's not a good fit. I mean, this is not for everybody. Right. But then, the people that it is for, or that would possibly do it, like it's hard. I mean, it is hard. Like this, I mean, you think about creating a brand and then, you're putting yourself out there. It's like throwing a party, and then what if nobody showed up? That would suck.
Yeah.
Right. And it's kind of the same thing. Like you created a party with this podcast. What if nobody listened? I mean, that would suck.
That was the case for a while.
Yeah. And you got to keep
showing up.
You got to get through the darkness, right? It's like you hear those stories of people that get lost in the wilderness for however long, and they're found dead a quarter mile from a home or a quarter mile from a major road. It's like they were so close, and it's like, I mean, I know that's sort of dark, but the analogy is like a lot of times you're going through darkness and you got to get through it, and you don't know, is that another quarter mile? Is it another 40 miles? You don't know. And all the while, it's not just a smooth walk. You're putting yourself out there. You're very vulnerable. This is all in. You're like, it's almost easier for me to sell somebody else's supplement and just say, hey, here are all the things about it. I know this science. I know this is why it's good. Bing, 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 bing. What do you think? And I'm just disconnected from it. I can just sell it. Whereas this is mine. Even when people don't look, I went to a demo the other day. One of my guys there has the most unbelievable energy. I mean, you just walk in and he's just like one of those video games. They're just like sucking people over. I mean, they're just so drawn to him. And he's like, yeah, come check this out. And then people inevitably, and I'm just there. It's not like I have a shirt that says I'm the owner or anything else. I'm just dressed like this, and then, people will ask some question and I'll just feel compelled to chime in. And I'm like, well, this is why we decided to use Paraxanthine, or this is why saffron's so our favorite, whatever. And people get a little bit of a different light in their eyes when they see you actually founded it and it was your brainchild. And then they start asking different questions, which I find is fun in person. But on the internet, I think it's a little bit, people can be very hurtful, sometimes on purpose, right?
Sure.
It's like, just why not? I feel like shit. So I'm going to make you feel like shit. And that's what I try to tell anybody who will listen to me. Most people who are hurtful, it's about them, not you, right? It's for whatever reason. I mean, I was talking to a girl the other day. She was bullied without mercy in high school, and by this one girl. Fast forward 20 years, the bully's mom just kept comparing her to the other girl. It's like, why can't you be like her? Why can't you be like her? So the girl didn't know what to do and took it out on this girl. She knew none of this. She was just getting bullied and was miserable, right? And so she had a terrible existence, and she had that liberation of knowing, hey, she's actually coming from a dark place. It's not about me, really. It's about, anyway, I don't know. We're talking about bullying, but starting a brand it's scary. And I think, and then you mix in the fact that there's no safety. It's very uncertain, right? And I think a lot of times people do want to see you succeed because they want to, why not? I mean, isn't that fun to be, hey, I knew Josh when 4 people were listening to his podcast. Now look at him, like, he's my boy. Yeah. I forwarded his podcast. Everybody I knew, on a second episode, like they can be a part of your success, and and they will be, because you won't succeed without that type of help.
Well, dude, I think I love the tangents, by the way. They all interconnect because I was bullied in school. I know what that feels like. I was 280 pounds at one point.
Yep.
And like the construct of my upbringing was welfare, government cheese, Velveeta, like no produce,
Yep.
like just not a healthy environment that's conducive to grow a good body or a great mind.
Yeah.
And then also having a mom that was struggling with bipolar at the time and a dad who was gone, it was like a Molotov cocktail for just insanity. And I never really knew how to feel safe here, in my physical body.
Sure.
And so a lot of my work and a lot of my sharing, like, sharing, learning out loud here on the podcast has been holding space for conversations like this that, yes, they're about the thing, but the thing actually is only a presenting solution for the deeper core problem. And I think if you look at America specifically, the deeper core problem that MTE addresses, that sleep addresses, all these healthy things that we bring in, the deeper core problem is that we don't know how to love ourselves at all. We just don't. And I don't care if it's Zach Bush or Dr. Stan Tatkin or Mark Groves or any of the specialists in the world that make love an actual ingredient for purpose and success and happiness. It's an uncomfortable topic for men, for sure. When you and I were growing up, our dads weren't like, hey, let's do this self-love course together.
Yeah.
That was not a thing, right? There was no conversation, especially like, I know you have a football background. I played football in high school. I was the long snapper, which was super fun.
Dude, I
love
remember talking about that.
That's right.
And I was going to bring a ball today to
Maybe
long
we'll
snap,
do it. We'll do it sometime.
Yeah.
In Dripping Springs.
Yeah, totally.
Well, the reason I'm saying this is because if there was a focus on loving ourselves and making self-love practical and masculine for men and accepted by society instead of this fucking platitude that we see, like people like Michael Pollan, who wrote The Omnivore's Dilemma, he'll say, the platitude is that love is all there is. And when you learn how to love yourself, your life expands.
Yeah.
And we see that as a square on social media, and it just gets scrolled down. The emperor is not wearing any clothes, and we just go, yeah, I know, but do we really know? I think this whole conversation about treating the body with love and care through smart supplements is actually, why are we doing it in the first place? So my intention with this pod and this conversation is not for people to be like, okay, I'll buy the thing and put it on the shelf. That's boring. And that's not inspiring.
Right.
I think what is inspiring is, can you bring in tools and scaffolding that allow you to have the evidence that you love yourself? That's what this is all about, Jeff.
Totally.
It's all about learning how to love yourself. I don't care if you're 4 years old or 44 or 80.
Yeah.
We get to learn how to love ourselves because we can't be fucked with. We're less monetizable at that point. Then we're only spending our money on the tools and resources that fortify the love that we have for us.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think totally. I think that's why I think you see a lot of people's addictions and things like that kind of manifest from the opposite of that, right? And it's sort of like a self-harm, if you will.
Self-loathing. Yeah.
Yeah, like self-loathing is probably a far better term. And then the opposite of that is obviously self-love. And I think that's, I think it's so powerful. And when you have that contentment, right? And it doesn't mean content like I'm resting on my laurels, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to, you can still have desire and still push, right? And still be ambitious while being content. I mean, that's the state I try to find myself in, right? Is being content, but also ambitious and pushing. I remember when I launched this, people were like, congratulations. I'm like, on what? I've literally haven't sold one box. Like, anybody could create this shit. But, I've learned to kind of, even in a short period of time, to step back and sort of enjoy the small wins and be content. And then, that manifests itself into, for me, more comfort and just like enjoyment and being able to enjoy the process. Like somebody one time said, if you look at any process, like whatever it is, right? Like it's life or it's selling a business or graduating high school or graduating college or whatever. If you and you look at it's a line, right? And then that line is made up of hundreds of thousands of dots, millions of dots, whatever. And, and then so dense that it becomes a line, right? Like a dot matrix printer, if you will, or something like that. And the very end is the actual event, right? Graduating college, getting that job, buying the house or whatever it is. if you just focus on that end goal, you miss all the hundreds of thousands of millions of instances leading up to that goal. And you focus on one dot out of millions, let's call it. Like when you put it to somebody that way, it sounds absolutely insane. Who would do that? Who would ignore a million instances and just focus on one? But yet that's what we do. And I think a lot of times taking a step back, having that perspective for me has helped me be so much happier, so much more content, know that I'm on this line of millions of data points and I'm going to enjoy every one of them. I'm going to enjoy getting at launch. I'm going to enjoy picking out the orange color because I was inspired by my orange tree in my backyard. Like I'm going to enjoy that instead of just transactional, just turn, next, got to the dot.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, dude, being happy, if you can, because I think a lot of that is perspective and manifest from within, right? If you can get that frame of mind and that perspective, dude, I've said this before a couple times today, but that's success, right? I mean, I think that's just an amazing way to go through life, and no one can take that from you.
Man, how many movies are made where the main character gets all the money, gets the girls, gets the thing, and then they're completely empty?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people that I've met in groups, whether it's like business or networking, and they might have like 6, 7 zeros in their bank account.
Yeah.
And they're a total fucking asshole.
Yeah, totally.
I would never want to spend time with them.
Right.
But they're still striving for more. It's like you're going in the wrong direction, dude.
Right.
Like there is a certain point, if you look at Maslow's triangle, where once you get out of safety and threat to life and you're providing food and sustenance for yourself and your family, then if you want to just focus on getting from that dot to that dot, that's probably good. But if you lead your whole life from safety and scarcity and, root chakra conversations, then all that's going to bring you is just this mindset of like, I got to get to the next thing, Jeff. I got to get to the next thing because then I can breathe, then I can relax. But then we're missing the whole enjoyment of the ride.
Dude, totally.
And I think we forget that we die.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's been coming through a lot for me. We just forget that we're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
So if we can just slow down and enjoy the process of the climb. I remember Gary Vaynerchuk was being interviewed. Now, I'm not a huge fan of everything he says, but he was like, I love the climb. If I lost everything, I would enjoy building it back again. So it's not that end finite goal that's most important. It's actually who you're becoming on the journey of being whatever you want to be, whatever lights you up. I think that's how God gets a kick experiencing God's self and all these different fractals of us.
I learned that from my last business, just the grind, and then got to that end dot and was miserable and thought, okay. And I hadn't enjoyed leading up to it. I was just focusing on that last dot, which moves, by the way. It's not static, it's growing the business, getting this account, getting bigger, doubling in size, getting, selling the business, selling it for this much, it's like, it's never static. And then I sold it and I was like, man, I was miserable on that line, getting to this dot. Now I got to the dot. I'm no less miserable. and it took me, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. It wasn't like all the stress and everything else just went away either. It took me months to unwind and to feel, I had high blood pressure. I mean, it was manifesting into physical. It was a lesson, to be sure. I think your comment about some of the success and things like that, I think it's people's identity, right? Like, what is your identity? If your identity is being the rich guy, then, that's what you're going to grind on. If your identity is something altogether different, or being the balance guy, or being, and all these things can't be in a vacuum. I mean, I know nothing is absolute. Everybody likes to just tidy. This guy wants to be super rich. He's a bad dude, right? Like that's not always the case.
You can be rich and be amazing.
Totally.
Yeah, it's completely possible.
And you can be rich and be fucking miserable.
For sure.
Right? I mean, I think that's the lesson is, a lot of people think, well, if I won the lottery, this, or, it's fun to dream, but you also don't understand the cost that comes with that. Like there are, it's very rare that all things in your life would be equal and you would have Elon Musk money as an example, or I don't need Elon's money. I just need a couple million. Well, things are different, you're under a lot more stress probably. Things break differently. Your life, I've learned this a lot and I'm pretty fascinated with it by just people's propensity to project their existing situation and then just pull one thing that they would like to the good into their existing situation. Nothing else would change, right? I would still be comfortable and I would still be stress-free and I'd still be not have to think about work 7 days a week and everything, but I'd have 20 million on my bank account. Well, it usually doesn't work that way. There's some costs associated with that. And then that gets muddied by where are your priorities and how are you defining yourself?
I can relate. I don't think on your point, I don't think it ever works that way. You said it usually doesn't work that way.
Right.
If you look at all these people that have won the lottery, the far, far, far majority of them are like homeless in a year.
Totally.
They'll buy like a Maserati and then their lawyer will take half the money, whatever. What I'm saying is like, it goes back to like, I don't know if you remember this song from Biggie Smalls where he's like, mo money, mo problems.
Yeah.
Imagine if we could consciously explain what he's trying to say. And that is, when you focus on the fact that you get more money, you think your life is going to be easier. It's not. And it's really about more enjoying the journey, more gratitude, and just more peace along the way.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's really about.
Right.
But in order for us to have that thinking, we have to see life through a different lens. I mean, this is why I'm so focused on the Pentagon, the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial. Like we can start looking at life through a different lens instead of when I get there, I'll be okay. That's a scarcity-based way of thinking.
Yep.
But if I can nourish these 5 sides of myself for real, no bullshit, like really, really nourish them and be in integrity about nourishing them. My kids want to be around me. My lady wants to be around me. My friends support me.
Yeah.
I think that's a life worth living. Yet it's our responsibility to gather and to apply and to build that scaffolding of health.
Yeah,
and this is where the conversation of energy really kicks off. So let's shift gears to the biological aspect, because it was so important, man, that we covered the why and the story and the energy of emotion, right? Energy and motion, emotion.
Yeah. Sure.
Because who cares about supplements if we're not doing them for the right reason?
Right.
They don't matter.
Right.
That's why the supplement industry is so crazy. It's a freaking dog eat dog, wild, wild west world, dude.
Yeah.
And there's literally Wyatt Earp standing with guns in the supplement industry. Like it's insane.
It is insane.
It's not regulated, but then it is. You can say claims of something that doesn't work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I found in my research something really fascinating. Y'all are going to love this. When we look at caffeine sensitivity, this is where the paraxanthine adaptogen conversation gets super, super fun for me. So the CYP1A2 gene plays a major role in determining a person's sensitivity to caffeine. So if you have a certain allele that's expressed on an epigenetic level, that means that if you're a moderate oxidizer of caffeine, if you're a fast oxidizer of caffeine, maybe you don't have to take paraxanthine. I would argue that it's the best part of caffeine anyways. But if you're a slow metabolizer of caffeine and you've been drinking cups because that's just what the company gives you, and you're having all these other mystery health complications, go get the test.
Totally.
Go get the test. See if you have the CYP1A2 gene. If you have that allele for slow oxidization, this is a total game changer, dude. I don't know if you've thought about this for your company to actually offer this type of testing.
Yeah.
But the spiritual, emotional side we covered. The biological side really needs to be talked about because people are absolutely crushing themselves with caffeine. Research shows that 80% of people that drink coffee specifically know they want to stop, but they don't have the gravitas or they don't have the skills or whatever. There's just not the right ingredients there yet. So have you ever heard of this, by the way,
No.
this test for the allele for the epigenetics? How powerful would that be?
It's cool.
If you could have customers test to see if they're slow oxidizers.
Yeah.
And then that would be all the proof in the pudding they need to let go of caffeine and do the alternative source like the adaptogen and the paraxanthine.
Dude, the marketing mind in me, all I think of is just try a box of MTE first.
Don't even do the test.
I mean, I think, what's funny is I think the test would sort of manifest itself because this truly, when you have, because the other thing is this is not paraxanthine in a vacuum, right? I mean, this is combined with 9 other powerful synergistic ingredients that are contributing to healthy energy, right? They're contributing to better stress response. If you're stressed, fight or flight, you ever been in that real fight or flight, stressed?
Never, Jeff. Never.
You immediately crash,
never
right?
Been there.
You're like later on that day, you're exhausted, right? Like it happened, you kind of go in shock and then you get tired immediately.
Yeah.
That's what stress does to your body. It wears you out focus, being distracted, having brain fog, the brain is sort of spinning its wheels. That wears you out. Obviously, low quality sleep or suboptimal sleep. I mean, even if you're getting 7 hours, if your body needs 8, then it's, you're not there yet. So combining all these things, and then paraxanthine, which is unbelievable, right? It's we're building up your adrenals. This is not at a cost from tomorrow. This is actually putting a deposit in the account for tomorrow. I mean, it's just polar opposite, but I love it. I mean, you mentioned that to me, and the wheels like immediately began spinning, because I love this for everybody. I mean, I love this for coffee users, but if for somebody where they have this gene and they're going to take MTE and they're going to be like, they truly are going to be Bradley Cooper and Limitless.
Yeah.
They're going to be.
Well, I mean, and maybe y'all can understand this. Have you ever wanted to articulate yourself so much better than you do, and coffee doesn't work? That was a thing for me for a while, where I reached I actually think it was at the end of my personal training career, dude. I was like 10 years in, and I was slamming like probably 2 or 3 espressos in the morning. And I got to this place where I would go in at like 6 in the morning, and I was utterly exhausted. And it made no sense. I'm like, why? I just drank so much caffeine. Why am I exhausted? I slept, I think, pretty well. But I didn't know that when I took the test, it was through 23andMe. I'm not a huge fan of 23andMe. They sold my data, which sucks. I guess it was in the T's and C's. I'm not saying y'all should do 23andMe, but search online for reputable companies where you can get the test where they won't share your data. But I learned that I was a slow oxidizer to caffeine, which was pretty cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
Then I started looking for other things. And that's what opened up my mind to like adaptogens or alternative sources for it. That's actually what got me into breath work. Because breath work gives me a lot of energy as well.
Sure.
So for people that have this, there's also a spiritual quotient as well. And if y'all are watching this on Spotify or YouTube, this book is The Psychic Roots of Disease. And it's a Chinese medicine book. And there's a chapter in here on the liver, and how in Chinese medicine, the liver is the main processing unit for all things, caffeine included. But the liver is actually where the sediment of anger collects, which I think is fascinating, because let's say that you're a subset of the population, and I would assume, I haven't looked up the data or anything, I would assume that slow oxidizers for caffeine are like in the tens of millions in America, if not even in the hundreds of millions, because America is like 350, 375 million people.
Yeah.
So let's just say hypothetically that 50 to 100 million people are slow oxidizers. I would say that's safe to say. And even if it's 50, that's a lot of people that could have less suffering, that are experiencing chronic liver issues, most likely, and being angry all the time because of the coffee not being able to be filtered properly, the caffeine not being able to be filtered.
Totally.
The spiritual component is there. The biological component is there. What is the awareness that we need to bring to people around shifting from caffeine to other sources? What is the awareness that needs to be said?
Dude, I mean, you think 10% of the population, 35 million, and that's insane, right? So even if it's just 10%.
Even if it's 1 million people.
Right. But let's call 35 million people walking around. And now how many of them use caffeine or don't? I mean, that's another conversation. But caffeine I've always looked at it's a hammer, right? You're getting stimulated whether or not you want it, right?
No doubt.
And you're getting to the byproducts. So having this, like one thing that you said that really jumped out at me is the anger. Like I look at saffron, and some of the saffron we use is clinically studied at 28 milligrams. And what blew me away was the study has anger, vigor, mood, confusion, all these markers, even low mood, depression. And so was there a reduction in anger? Is there a reduction in confusion? Is there a reduction in, on it goes. And they had a small pink bar for the placebo. So the placebo effect happened across the board. And then at 22 milligrams, the bar was quite a bit lower. And then at 28 milligrams, it was significantly lower. In every case, it was just this waterfall. And to me, it was like, that is so powerful and because we know the placebo effect generally happens, but then to see, okay, 22 worked a little bit more than 28. So of course we formulated right at 28. And that's one of the things I love about what we put together. And I can say that because this wasn't like I sat in the room and was like, here are my 10 ingredients. I'm a master. You know, this is the input of so many people smarter than me and have done so much, you know, it's so much more research, and I'm so grateful for all of them. And one of them is saffron, because the anger, having clinically studied lower anger from saffron alone, then you put that on a rocket by removing caffeine, putting paraxanthine in, not, you know, and getting into this, even taking Chinese medicine out of the equation. Like if that's too, you know, that's too far out of on the margins for me, you know, as like I imagine telling my dad about Chinese medicine, you know, I'd be like, I'm good. Like, you know,
sounds like woo woo, smoke and mirrors, word salad, son.
Exactly. So, you know, but which I'm hip to, like I like that, and I think it's a very real thing. I think about another conversation with like my general wellness practitioner, chiropractors that are really driven by Chinese medicine and think the kidney and the liver and how these really affect your whole body. I mean, I remember one time I had gout from eating too much kale, turns out, and I was like, whole other conversation, but it all came down to kidney function.
Wait, hold up. We got to go into that.
Yeah.
How did you get gout from eating too much kale?
Dude, I mean, it's the classic too much of a good thing, right? Like I was going to this smoothie place in New York City, and they were like, you want to add kale? And I'm like, kale's good for you. I'm like, well, hell yes. And I would eat 1 or 2 of these a day. So I'm just like crushing kale. And you know, like, and now there's plenty of people out there that will tell you the oxalates and everything are actually terrible for you, right? And so I'm not picking a side, but I can tell you they were terrible for me. I haven't touched kale since then and have had no issues. Traditionally, gout, right? Like booze, seafood, shellfish, you know, those types of things, never was a problem for me. It was kale. So anyway, like
that's so counterintuitive to what people think,
dude.
Fun fact about kale. I promise we'll get right back to what you're saying. Pizza Hut was the business that was the largest purchaser of kale forever.
Right. For garnish.
But it wasn't for people to eat. It was for garnish around their salad bar.
That's right. Yeah.
Kale has always been a decorative vegetable,
garnish,
not one that you eat. I think that's so wild, dude.
Dude, I was like, this is new superfood, you know, and I'm like,
yeah,
I have a propensity to overdo it. You know, that's why I'm always talking about balance, because it's like, dude, even if kale were something I want to eat, I don't know that I need to eat it twice a day, every day.
Sure.
You know,
well, you could say the same thing about steak, like all these carnivore people.
Totally.
They're just mainlining like tomahawk steaks 5 times a day. And they think that they're going to be healthy. Dude, like you can't do something so freaking eccentric forever and think that you're going to find balance.
I also don't like, I was talking to my business partner about this yesterday. Like, how many of those people are really living that life anyway?
No doubt.
Because having, like, going on and being a creator and influencer where your purpose is, or what you need to do is get viewers and clicks and, you know, and on it goes, that's your living. If you come out and you're like, okay, we eat a balanced meal, like nobody wants to see that shit. They need sensationalism, you know? It needs like, you eat nothing but steak 9 days a week. You know, it's like, is that really what they're doing? Like, they're not eating any vegetables.
Or like Liver fruit. King, where he's like literally chewing on a raw testicle and it's dripping down his beard. And then a couple months later, he's like, sorry guys, I was on Trent and I did steroids. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
It is smoke and mirrors on social.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think you have to, I talk about this with my kids a lot. I try to keep them away from this stuff, but just general awareness is like, there's a lot of clickbait out there. No doubt. Normalcy doesn't sell right down the fairway. People are like, I already live that life. I already have a vegetable and a lean protein on my plate. I don't need you for that. And meanwhile, you have somebody who's like, eat meat and you're going to die. There's 2 types of people, vegans and morons, you know? And then somebody else is like, I only eat meat, and, you know, and it's so confusing. And I think normalcy is somewhere in the middle.
What's up with the saffron? It's like one of the most expensive ingredients in the world. Why is saffron and how much, and what's that whole story?
Saffron is amazing because it is 21 times more expensive than any other ingredient in my formula. It's insane.
How much is it like per ounce? Do they do it by per ounce?
We do it by pound. It's $1,200 a pound.
Yo, that sounds like it's more expensive than cocaine.
Dude,
or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't buy cocaine.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think what's funny is they sell saffron in kilos because you always hear kilos of cocaine.
It's a kilo. Okay, yeah.
So our kilos are, whatever that math works out to be, $3,100 or something like that.
Okay.
It's 2.2 pounds in a kilo. Dude, if it weren't that expensive, I'm convinced it would be the number one supplement in the country, if not the world.
How so?
Because it is so powerful for sleep and mood. And this isn't just like anecdotally or, I had a sample side, tried it on my brother and he was in a better mood and slept good that night. So, we're stamping it, which you alluded to earlier, like supplement industry is the Wild West. Mm-hmm. Dude, I mean, way more than people know. Like people have some skepticism, but I think if they really knew, it's insane. Which is why we're really proud to have done this. I mean, I built it and I tell my team all the time, people need to know we're founder led, founder run, because I built this for me. My partner built it for him. We take it, our wives take it, our families take it, our friends take it. And, it starts with us, because if I'm pixie dusting a little bit in there just to say I have some saffron, but not getting the clinical studies, what's the point? Like, I didn't build this to dupe people. I built it to help me feel good and be well, and then spread that to the world because I wanted to do something good in the world. I mean, that's why I built this. And I wanted to do something good in the world, for the world. Starting with the fraud is really not a great way to accomplish that.
Yeah. So
back to your question, the saffron, it's the clinical studies, double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized, on hundreds of people, and it's reducing anger, it's reducing confusion, reducing depression in some cases, which they call low mood, increasing vigor, and then better sleep at night. Not just, I slept better last night, but clinically, again, same deal, clinically studied, less sleeplessness, quicker to REM, waking up more restful, and to me, the translation of that is feeling good, waking up rested.
What's the transport pathway on saffron? Like, I know, for example, when you take glutamine, or when you're taking things that are specific to relax the excitatory part of the brain, or when you're taking supplements that are specific to bring in blood to the prefrontal cortex, then you're going to be more able to handle stressors, things like that. What's the transport pathway or the neurology behind saffron? Because you said it's all about less anger. That's really, and maybe that's a more scientific heavy question for your formulator, but what's that all about?
Gut, second brain. And I think that goes back to, just to kind of talk about that. I think people are learning more and more how powerful the gut is. Like, it's second brains, controls the immunity. But you start looking at like, what always did it for me was GABA, right? So we have GABA in here. I'm a big believer in it. And it doesn't pass the blood-brain barrier. So a lot of people are like, how could it have anything to do with mood, calming, which is what it does, and not pass the blood-brain barrier? It makes no sense because it's absorbed in the gut. That's how powerful the gut is. A lot of this starts in the gut. Saffron's the same. It's absorbed in the gut and gives you, and yet has this effect on your brain, much like GABA. So I think somebody told me the other day, I heard this, I've talked about this before, it still blows my mind, is there is not a supercomputer powerful enough today, even now, we're talking about AI that's going to take over the world and everything else, there's not a supercomputer around that can compute all of the different variabilities in the gut, right? With all the billions of virus, bacteria, mold, everything that's in there. That's just, I can't get my mind around that. I mean, you think about all those eventualities and our inability, we can create an AI to basically, it's going to take over, the fear is it's going to like take over the world, but we can't calculate all the possibilities in the gut. That's how complex it is. And now they're starting to understand that's also how powerful it is. Your brain is driven, not driven, but in conjunction, the gut is not just a receptacle for some food and it just goes on its way. It's saffron, GABA, chief among them. You have these are being absorbed in the gut and through the digestive tract, but having a real meaningful impact on your mood and your brain function.
Have you seen these supercomputers where they they literally are in superposition, so they can process zeros and ones at the same time, the quantum computers.
Okay.
They're so gnarly that it takes a huge warehouse and they have to super cool them with like dry ice. They have to put this computer at the lowest temperature in the world that's possible. I think it's like minus 250 Celsius or something.
Okay.
I don't know the exact thing.
Yeah.
But I saw it in, I think it was like American Scientific or Scientific Magazine. And even those computers, the quantum computers, still can't crack the codes of why life is here and what life is all about. No matter how strong science gets, we're never really going to fully grasp 100% of the body's magic. It ain't possible, dude.
Right.
If it ain't going to happen with a super cooled quantum computer, it's probably not going to happen to us that are sitting in a scientific lab or on a podcast. But then we know that these things are great for us because back in the day, we would have gotten them from nature at certain times, right?
Yeah,
so there's just certain wisdom that we use science to try to make us believe again. Why don't we just go to the wisdom? Why don't we just go back to the wisdom of nature in the first place?
Sometimes,
do we need a quantum computer for the wisdom of nature?
That's the thing. Like sometimes, like I like the rabbit hole, sometimes of like, okay, GABA has its effect on the brain, but doesn't pass the blood-brain. Like, how could it work? Well, good question. Like, how could it work? And you start, if you're curious, that's a cool rabbit hole to go down and start to kind of figure out. On the flip side, I also like the simplicity of every time I take GABA, I feel good and calm. I don't really care how it works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, I don't know. There's two schools of thought there, and obviously the truth's probably in the middle, but dude, there's no telling. But to answer your question, saffron in the gut, it's and like to answer your first question, a lot of what GABA does is I don't want to call it replaced, but ashwagandha is probably its greatest competitor, if you will. I mean, ashwagandha is really known for mood and sleep as well, and we have ashwagandha, incidentally, in a meaningful dose. But I find the clinicals on saffron are significantly more, and it's worth the juice is worth the squeeze there for me. Having it in my formula, I would have it no other way. Yeah,
same with the ashwagandha and the testosterone conversation. So I've come across some research around natural boosting of testosterone by ashwagandha, which I think is amazing because, at certain points in your life, you may do TRT or you may do peptides. Like, I'm not against these things. I'm pro health. And if you get there through healthy, conscious use of peptides or hormones, great. Yeah. Sometimes that's necessary. But I would say for the most part, leading a good life and living your life in the construct of nature is so challenging for people that like live in New York City or these concrete jungles.
Totally.
That the only way back to nature is actually by supplementing. Yeah. That's the only way. I mean, it would be great if we lived on a ranch on Yellowstone, which love that show. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that Kevin Costner's not on that show anymore.
I just heard the guy who wrote that's from Texas.
Yeah. He just bought the 4 Sixes ranch.
Yeah.
For like $300 million. Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
Well, he went on Rogan and he was talking about the peptides he uses.
Okay.
Right. For inflammation. He would do these long day shoots. So it's interesting how we're weaving the conversation. Like, there is a place and a time for science and peptides and hormones.
Yeah.
But on the whole blanket statement, if we could just live our life through a lens of nature, I think we would need a lot less supplements. But the far majority of us don't live on Yellowstone Ranch, man. Right. We're just not like that. And for the blessed few that were raised on a farm, like Paul Chek or Dr. Kevin Preston, great. But I wasn't raised on a farm. I was raised in La Mesa, California, which is like suburbia.
Totally.
And so we have to make do with what we have. I think it's a strong piece to add in this scaffolding of smart supplements because they bring us closer to nature when we can't live and be surrounded by nature ourselves.
I love that. That's what, it's certainly not as eloquent as you just put it, but that was in a weird way of a big part of us creating this too, was just because we wanted to help people be well. And we acknowledged even my own path, right? Like, we were in New York, apartment, concrete everywhere, fight or flight the second you walk out the door, right? Just 24/7. People everywhere, loud noises, tall buildings, shadows, the whole thing. Then we moved to Miami to sort of increase the quality of life, loved it, but wanted more. So we came out here and bought land and have the ability to spread out grow our own food, can't see our neighbors, that type of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, but I still have, the majority of my friends are in Miami, New York still, right? So I go back and I just, it's not one of those things where it's just like, well, I left, tough shit. It's like most of my friends are still living this life that I lived for decades.
Yeah.
And so, so they love it. I mean, a lot of them are like, dude, this has been a game changer for me. Not that this is bottling up living on a ranch in Central Texas, but it is sort of meant to get back to that. Because to me, it all comes full circle. Living out here on a I don't want to call it a ranch because I'm not a rancher, but and it's not that big either. But like
do you own a cowboy hat?
No.
Okay, well,
not yet. Yeah. But it's like a gentleman's ranch. We wake up feeling less stressed, better ability to focus. It's less, it's a dark sky community, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, all these things just allow us to get to sleep quicker, better, more rested. All these, is that sensing a trend, right? Like, being able to have energy, feel good, get better sleep, be in a better mood. How is that a bad thing? Then it's, then it manifests itself into just the community, right? The person in front of you is more likely to hold the door because he's having a great day and he's not stressed and he's not pissed and he didn't get 2 hours of sleep last night, the restless sleep. Actually got a full night's sleep, feels great and wants to hold the door and come on in and and then on it goes. He's not going to cut you off in traffic. You put your blinker on, the guy's going to actually take his foot off the gas and make a little room for you instead of speeding up and flipping you off. It's like these things just all brick by brick communities. My vision is not utopia. I mean, I'm not delusional, but my vision is like a higher state of community where people are, when people feel better, they're happier, they're more likely to be better parents, students, employees, bosses, daughters, on it goes. And so that was the genesis of this. That's what I want.
Yeah, well, when we start collaborating instead of just being consumers and consumption-based humans, magic is fucking possible.
Yeah, dude.
When we're actually really, like what you and I are doing, right? Like, I believe in something, I talk about it, I share it. It's like sharing is the antidote to us believing in the illusion that we're separate and that it's you versus me. What a fucking old, boring game that is.
Right.
That's just like such a game I'm not interested in playing anymore, is this competition game.
Right.
So when your buddies were like, well, who's your major competitors and blah, blah, blah. It's just such an exhausting conversation.
Yeah.
The conversation of competition. I think if we can put our heads and hearts around the fact that we get to collaborate with each other, and as we all build our individual dreams, that we can help each other along the way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like what kind of a world is that's the closest to utopia we're going to get.
Right.
If we just collaborate with each other.
Totally.
But it's the scarcity driven thinking that's top down. Case in point, people are freaking out. Oh my God, Donald Trump is going to bring on world wars and do all these things. I just want everybody to know, like, the only war that's going to be brought on by you putting someone in power of you is the war within yourself.
Right.
That's the only war that's going to happen. It's not going to, and even if there is world wars and things like that, we can't control that in our little bubble of Jeff or Josh or anybody that's with us. I think what's really powerful is like, and I talked about this earlier, you're less monetizable when you're caring and loving yourself. If you have self-love, if you're taking care of the 5 aspects of you, if you're doing a scaffolding play where you have smart supplements like the MTE, you're drinking clean water, you're doing all these things, you're adding in all these things that make you less monetizable.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, y'all, like you're not going to care who's president. You're not going to care what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. You're just going to be focused on your health, your family, your community, and that's what ripples out.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to change the world and they're just ignoring the world inside of themselves.
Totally.
It's completely backwards.
You know what I find too is we're very conscious about what we put in our bodies, food and drink, but not all the news and all the other crap. Right. And that's a real thing. I mean, what you're consuming shapes you. Right. And if you're, to my point earlier, people are not, it is not valuable to say things that are reasonable because people, they don't get clicks. Right. It's like the most popular, I mean, Mr. Beast or whoever the biggest Instagram following isn't just sitting there saying, well, going to my 9-to-5 job and then I'm going to go to soccer practice and go home and cook dinner. Like nobody wants to see that shit. They want to see this exceptional, these hard takes, these divisive takes, this, whether it's what you should eat, vegan, meat, this, that, or politics, this world war or this or that. It's like, I think people should really take stock of what they're putting in, not only their body, but also their mind. Yeah. I think it's super important. And how much, right? Like I tell my kids this all the time. I mean, I know I'm beating on about how much I parent my kids, but it's really helped me shape who I want to be. And, because you just kind of go through, at least for me, I just kind of went through life just happy go like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, do that. Mm-hmm. Now and it didn't it mattered clearly, but it was me, right? Now it's like, now I'm responsible for somebody else. I'm trying to give them the absolute best of me, whatever that is. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think that I have nailed is what you consume, not only in the literal sense, but also, in the metasphere, whatever you want to call it, like how much and what it is, right? Like we're not eating 9 meals a day. Who would do that? But a lot of times we're eating 9 meals, quote unquote, of consumption of media, mm-hmm. right? Like that's insane. You sit down with your family, how much a week for dinner? Even if you do it 7 nights a week, and who's doing that if we're honest?
We're doing it.
But even if you do, like we do it 5 to 6, mm-hmm. What is that? Call it an hour a meal. So let's call it 7 hours a week, right? You're sitting with your family. How much you spending online, looking at media? Probably more than that, right? You're on the social media, you look 24-hour news cycle. That's influencing you as much as your time with your family. But nobody looks at it through that lens. I never looked through that lens until one day I looked over and we were in the car and I was talking to my daughter and her response to me was delayed. And I was like, what's going on? I look over and she's not really, she's actually very good about it. But I looked over and I was like, what are you doing? We're having a conversation. You can't do both. And you can't do incidentally, another tangent, multitasking is a term that was made for computers. Humans cannot multitask. We can shift from one task to another in a nanosecond. So it seems like I'm talking to you now, I'm going to focus on what I'm going to say next. Or, it seems like we can multitask, but we are hardwired. We can only do one thing at a time. We're able to change gears quickly, but you see it have you ever talked to somebody and they're on their phone and their answer's delayed, even if it's a half a beat, it's just not the normal course of response because they're filling their mind. So anyway, I saw that and I was like, what are you doing? We're talking, we're supposed to be having human interaction. You're filling yourself with what are you looking at your grades? You doing some homework? No, some garbage. She's looking on a site, reading about God only knows what. And so I think we should all be very careful about, if I said to you, Josh, I want you to, you're going to have 4 desserts after every meal. You would be like, that ain't happening under any circumstances. But yet when you put it in that lens in terms of what they're consuming media wise, a lot of times that's what they're doing.
I really love that story with your daughter. Because stories are how we understand life. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you were like, you can't do 2 things at once. Yeah. Multitasking is built for computers. Yet we are a computer. It's this weird construct we play in, Jeff, of I'm a biological, electrical being. I'm also a spiritual being. And our kids are such teachers for us. I think I teach my son. Ha!
Right.
My son teaches me, dude.
Totally, yeah.
Your kids teach you. Yep. And if you look at the energy that kids have, don't we all just want to have the energy of kids? Mm-hmm. As adults, we've just created baggage and, decay or as my buddy Mark from Newtopia would say, detritus, which is the thing that, helps us it stops us from the blooming of neurogenesis is the detritus. So the very last thing, I can't let you go without talking about this one last thing. And that is, the spiritual component we covered, the biological component we covered. There's one missing piece when it comes to the power of our brain, because a lot of the energy that we feel in our body actually starts in the brain. There's a feedback loop there. So nootropics, we've gone into depth on this show a lot. But if you can just cover briefly what you think people must know about the nootropics in the product, I think that would be a great way to round out the energy conversation, because really what we're discussing is more than energy, more than just stimulants.
Yeah.
And nootropics are a big piece of that. I would say I do them almost every day.
Totally.
Some type of nootropic. So why nootropics in there, and just a high level of what they are?
So, okay, I would just tell you a couple of things. One, like you talking about like learning from the children and child, like one of the things we used to say early on as we were kind of finding our voice here was having energy, childlike energy, like a summer vacation. Right. It's just like endless, right? Like no kid is ever like, I'm too tired to go play and have summer. Right. And that's kind of how I wanted this to feel. And I always felt like that had to come foundationally, right? Those kids are generally have that type of energy because it's a foundation, not because they went and crushed a coffee. Right? Yeah. It's just built in them. Right. Yeah. And that's what I wanted this to be. And I think that's sort of a segue into what you'd asked about the nootropics is two things here. Like number one, I feel like if you just have energy and it's a quick fix, right? You're on a hamster wheel, right? If you're borrowing from tomorrow to pay for like all these, however you want to posture it, it's not great, right? It's suboptimal. And you're not going from good to great. I think that's more of going from suboptimal. I slept 4 hours last night. I'm just going to do anything I can to just get through the day. That's not what this is about. Like if you slept 4 hours last night, I don't know that MT is for you, frankly. I think it's like meant to take you from good or pretty good or really good to next level. I think of it as like Olympic athletes supplementing. They're not supplementing because they're not great athletes. They're supplementing because they want to be even better, right? That's number one. Number two is I feel like particularly what caffeine and some energy drinks and things like what they're missing is they're just giving you energy, never mind the cost and everything that we just talked about, but you have no ability to use it properly, right? Like in terms of what, if you have a bunch of energy, but you're still up to your teeth in stress, right? Or you're anger, confused, you're like can't focus, you have brain fog. Like what's the point? Now you're just awake and still miserable and still performing suboptimally and still, I would argue you'd be better off without the energy because then at least the brain fog isn't like, oh my God, but I can't focus, that seems miserable. So the nootropic we put in here, there's a couple, but the most powerful one, the one that really leads the charge that we love is Paraxanthine. I know you know a ton about Paraxanthine. What I love about it is it does many of those things. It gives you this smooth energy. We hear from people all the time. I didn't really realize how good I felt until it wore off, right? It just sort of like drifts away. It's not and then crash. And number two, all the clinical studies on it are really focused on mood, blood flow, and focus, right? And so to me, that's more than energy. That's being able to have energy to then to go deploy it and use it and be your best self. What's the point otherwise, right? Now you're just awake and still suboptimal, still miserable. So this increasing short-term memory, increasing cognition under physical stress, right? Increasing the ability to pay attention. Like these things are significant, particularly in today's society, but also increasing blood flow to the brain, increasing nitric oxide, increasing thermogenic burn even. So you're taking this versus a placebo, you're burning 100 extra calories a day than you would otherwise. Like just these sort of ambient benefits. That to me is, because caffeine's a nootropic by definition. So, not all nootropics are created equal. This to me is the preeminent nootropic. It is so powerful in what it does. And kind of creates this limitless ability, if you will, this ability to dial in calm, focused energy, good mood, right? All these things in concert with each other. I mean, it's like, it's an unbelievable, sometimes I think the biggest struggle for us is people understanding the value prop. Some people go into, they're like, this is energy drink. Okay. And then it doesn't melt their face, like some of these energy drinks at the gas station. And they're like, it's not working for me. And we're like, it's not what it's about. It's about this full spectrum kind of your pentagon. It's kind of the same thing here in the sense that, it's not just energy, it's energy and focus and mood and recovery and gut health, right? All these things in concert will take energy out of the equation. Those 4 things in concert will give you energy naturally and foundationally. And then we boost it obviously with the Paraxanthine. So I love the Paraxanthine. It's an amazing product, but less about a single use. I think for me, that's the beauty of nootropics, is the nootropics that we want to use is it's less about single use and more about a full spectrum, right? It's boosting so many things at once that work in concert with each other. I don't like the stuff working in silo, right? And that's kind of one of this, a lot went into this as you'd expect, but some of it was having many years ago, a suitcase full of supplements, right? It's like, I want one for this function and this one for here.
Oh,
one
yeah,
here.
I've been there.
Right. And it's like, this supplement maker didn't know that you were going to take this supplement. And this guy didn't know you were going to take this one down here. And so they're at best, they're fractioned. And at worst, they're working, against each other and overlapping and, in a detrimental way. This was created for all of them to be harmonious and to affect all of the things that to me are more than energy, which lead to energy. And it's sort of a flywheel to the good.
Yeah.
And, so that was MTE.
I love nootropics so much. They are a total game changer because there's not this come at a cost, to quote Sean Wells.
Right. Yeah.
The come at a cost is like, you might throw gasoline on a fire and it's going to flare. You're going to burn the wood.
Yep.
But it's going to die and you're not going to have a roaring fire.
Right.
Like the fire won't burn for a long time. So if you think of metabolism like a fire, if you just pour gasoline on a fire, it's going to flare up and die.
Yeah.
But if you drip fuel and you get really solid wood, this is the wood for the fire that we all know is possible of burning, yet it's been so hard for people to find out about it. So thank you for coming on the podcast and making people more aware. It's like, well, if we don't know what we don't know, I can't hold it against myself or anyone else.
Right.
So when I found out about Paraxanthine, I was just like, give me a megaphone for this stuff.
Right.
Because it is a game changer, hands down. Like I'll put my whole reputation on that and my family on that because my lady and I every day and my friends and everybody's like, Paraxanthine, it's this buzzing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think why it's so exciting is because we all want to feel good. We all want to have that childlike vacation summer joy you're talking about.
Yeah.
We all want that, but we've been stuck on this merry-go-round of coffee and caffeine for so long. Let's play a new game.
Right.
Let's just play a new game. Right. Life is a game. And the more we become skilled at playing the game, everybody wants to play video games and like get to the boss. The boss is actually you. You're playing against yourself. So play a better game.
Yeah.
That's really how I want to end this podcast. Like, let's just play a new game. I'm not shaming the caffeine. There's a time and a place, maybe for emergency use, but on the regular, I think if we're going to be homeostatically driven humans with a center point where we feel good and we're balanced, we've just got to choose to play a different game. You
Love
feel me?
it, dude. Love it, dude.
Let's play a new game.
I'm not even going to add to that. It's just, you always take what I say and make it sound better. So I'm going to stay out of it.
Well, this is actually the superpower of wellness and wisdom of the company, is taking these huge topics and boiling them down into something practical that people can use every day. So on a practical level, as we say goodbye, how do you define being well? What is wellness to you if you had to put wellness in a bubble?
Feeling good.
So wellness to you is just feeling good.
Feeling good.
How so?
Because it encompasses everything, right? It's mental, it's physical, it's emotional, spiritual, right? It's you. If you're out of balance in one of those things, if you wake up, got great sleep, have energy, you feel good, you're healthy, but you're depressed, or you're in a fight with your spouse, or you got cut off by somebody road raging on you, had a fight with them. Like yesterday, I was walking my dogs and some lady yelled at me. That sucked, like I don't give people the power over me. I'm not that much of a snowflake, right? But, it's like, I don't want to be walking my dogs and get yelled at.
Yeah.
I want to feel good.
Yeah.
I was happy and I was in a great mood and I was, feel good. So I feeling good. That's like period. And it's a full spectrum. It has to be when it's all clicking. I think it's all in conjunction with each other. And man, when that's happening, it's like, that's the best. I mean, that to me is success. That's wellness. That's everything.
Love the conversation, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you
Thank
following your dream and
Yeah.
taking it to something people can actually use.
Oh, this is great. Thanks for having me. This
You're
is
so
fun.
welcome. You're so welcome. So enjoyable. Look forward to spending time with you and dripping.
Totally. We need to have a long
well.
snapping contest.
I think you'd win. All right, y'all. It's on the screen right now. joshtrent.com/MTE with all the amazing things that Jeff put in here with some guys in lab coats.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're not purely just a scientist.
Plenty of them. Yep.
Use the code Josh, 20% off. All right. Until we see you again, we're both wishing you love and wellness. We'll talk with you soon.